Hello, this is Lauren Cornelius and I play Dodo Chapler on Doctor Who for Big Finish. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
They all say, who is Doctor Who? Where is he from? What does he do? They wonder who is Doctor Who? So I ask you, who's Doctor Who?
Welcome back to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, the podcast that explores the hardbound world of Doctor Who collecting, the collectors, all kinds of Doctor Who merchandise, and Doctor Who in general. Great place to talk about it. Brought to you in part by Forbidden Planet and Bags Unlimited Incorporated. I have Larry Van Mersbergen, your host. I've been a Doctor Who collector now for 42 years, and I'm very proud to present this program to you. This is our 69th episode, celebrating 60 years of Doctor Who this year. Just to bring you up to speed, if you haven't heard this one before, I opened up actually one of the first Doctor Who stores in Chicago, and that was back in 1984. It's the same year that Who North America opened. So what do you know? We were called Bundles from Britain back in the day, and I didn't know that the company name would last beyond a few years. In fact, it didn't, until I picked up a book written by some wonderful people I call friends, and it's called Red, White, and Who, the story of Doctor Who in America. And I found Bundles from Britain in the index, and it lives on page 384. That just humbled me to death because I introduced myself to the authors and said, yeah, I'm the person who founded that company, and realizing, of course, fully that when I sold the company to my partner, and that partner was Gene Smith, and almost everybody in Doctor Who knows who he is. He is the showrunner of Chicago TARDIS, the CEO of Alien Entertainment, and he's also a good friend of mine. So there you go. You can find a copy of this book at DoctorWhoCollectors.com on the front page. I don't get any money from it. I don't want any money for it. You can buy it directly from ATB Publishing or from Amazon. Every collector should have it in their library. We are part of the Direction Point Doctor Who podcast network. Want to listen to some great Doctor Who? Then tune into Direction Point, directionpoint.org, and join the ranks, of course, with great podcasts such as Time Streams, Police Box and Junkyard, the Doctor Who Target Book Club, Doctor Who Literature, Traveling the Vortex, and many more. If you are a podcaster, you should be part of this network. Speaking of links, of course, two great resources every collector should have on their bookmarks includes timelash.com, and under that heading, the TARDIS Library, to keep track of your books, vinyl, and CD collection for free. Thank you, Mr. Dan O'Malley, for keeping that for us. If you need to do more in-depth research and something that may not be included in the TARDIS Library, you need Howe's Transcendental Toy Box. And you can find that at doctorwhotoybox.co.uk. And of course, by Howe, we are of course talking about my good friend, David J. Howe. Great friend, good resource, a great collector himself, author of many books. Telos Publications is his company, so be sure to give them a visit. If you're looking for great Doctor Who items at great prices, look no further than DoctorWhoStore.com. It's in the name. That is, of course, the web store for Alien Entertainment. Very close to that company, as you heard. So they're running a lot of specials. You can find some new copies of WHL and hardcovers, something you might want to look for. And if you live in the Chicago suburbs, you can select free pickup from the store. I love that. There you go. So, of course, you can also find at our website some great things like Forbidden Planet, one of our sponsors. And you can just go to our merchandise links at DoctorWhoCollectors.com. And don't forget our own eBay store. We have lots of Target books, some hardcovers that were extra in the collection. I don't like to keep duplicates per se, so a lot of that stuff is going online and will help other collectors. All proceeds at the eBay store help the podcast, so you keep us on the virtual air with every purchase. Don't forget Who North America, Keith and Jenny, amazing people, and they opened up the same year as Bundles. That's at whona.com. And of course, finally, our friends at the Who Shop in London. I'll never forget, I called them up one day and said, "Hi, this is Larry Van Mersbergen from the United States. We love your podcast." I was so touched. Wonderful people there. Please give them a visit. They do ship to the United States very carefully, and you'll love their selections. So be sure to check that out. Of course, in addition, on our website, you can find all of the podcasts that we put out. You know, Apple cuts off a few after a while, and so do other providers. So if you want to go back to the very beginning of the Doctor Who Collectors podcast, you can only do that at DoctorWhoCollectors.com. The other thing there you can find is our guide to the Doctor Who Classic hardcover books. We list all of the books that we know about, as much information and more information being added soon, such as print run numbers and any other information about the covers or things like that that we'll try to put in there. We've been helping a lot of other publications as well with our information. Doctoberfest is coming. I'm excited about October myself. Collision is the event, and you're going to love this because I myself am a guest at this show. I am going to be in the collecting room. We have a dedicated room to house the collections and talk about Doctor Who items from every era of Doctor Who, from the beginning to the present day. So I hope you're listening, Chicago TARDIS. We need that there. And of course, my good friend Elwee This Pagan will be there with his props and his autographs. And you can check out some really cool stuff. And don't forget, my panel, of course, is 60 items for 60 years this year. I have an item of Doctor Who or related to Doctor Who from every year of the program, from 63 to the present day. Not very easy to put together. I think you'll be impressed. So there you go. Oh, I forgot to mention, in addition to myself and Elwee This being guests, you got to come down and visit with Sophie Eldred. Yes, Ace will be there. And I'm excited to be on the guest list with her. She is an amazing person. You will love her. She is absolutely the best. You know, she's just one of the best people in Doctor Who. I've been friends with Katie Manning for a long time, and yes, I'm going to have her on the podcast as soon as, of course, she's still working, so it's very difficult to find time. But once we do, we will sit down and have a chat with her. I'm also going to be talking with Tony Lee in the future here. Tony Lee, of course, is an author, artist, and he'll be at Chicago TARDIS. And tentatively, we've got Mickey Lewis, too. We're going to talk with him. He's been a Cyberman. He's been a Sea Devil. You'll love to hear his stories. So anyway, come on down to Doctoberfest and check this out. You can get tickets at whona.com. It's at the Courtyard by Marriott in Canby, just outside Indianapolis. Not the same place as last year, so tickets are on sale, including special tickets if you want to have brunch or dinner with me or Sophie. But we'll both be there. I'm going to be there as well. Exciting. And while I'm on the subject here, Chicago TARDIS 2023. Here we go. And that's of course Thanksgiving weekend, the 60th anniversary of one of the best conventions in the Midwest. More information, of course, you can find at chicagotardis.com. So far, we got some more guests. Latest guest to be announced was Mickey Lewis. I just mentioned him. He was a Cyberman. He was a Sea Devil. And of course, we've got Jason Haig-Ellery and more. I think more Big Finish people will be announced very soon. Michael Troughton, of course, will be there. And we've got 3 doctors. Count them 3. Peter Davison, Colin Baker, and Sylvester McCoy. We'll have Stacy Smith. I love her. She's an author, and I sat next to her at a table at Consinity and got to be on a panel with her. She's a wonderful person. Jonathan Carley plays the War Doctor for Big Finish, and here we go, drum roll, don't have one. The very first companion, Carol Ann Ford, will be there, who played Susan for a season and a 2 there. You're going to love to meet her, too. I can't wait to meet her myself. Hotel reservations are live at the West Inn in Lombard, so don't forget. I'll see you all there. Grab a coffee at the in-house coffee shop. Take a stroll down Dalek Alley. Walk through the dealer's room. Half the dealer's room will be Alien Entertainment. DoctorWhoStore.com. Check them out. Say hello to Gene Smith and some of the other folks there. And be sure to come by and find me. If you come on Friday or Saturday, I will be in Peter Davison cosplay. On Sunday, I will be in either probably my podcast shirt or one of the Doctor Who logo shirts, as I sometimes do gaming on Sundays. I sometimes do a panel on Sunday, but you'll check it out there. It's my convention. It's where I go. So what else? I'm still trying to work with the Oricon folks in Oregon to have a video show for them. They're in Oregon, so it's hard to get out that way. Also trying to work with Console Room. They haven't gotten back to me yet, but they were interested in the collecting panel. And C2E2, of course, put me on a wait list, so we'll see what happens there. New to the collection, well, I got another Amazing World of Doctor Who puzzle. I'm hopefully going to get the next one from that series. I've got a full set of buttons from the Sugar Smacks serial promotion. They're all in very good condition. A Ghostlight soundtrack CD, which was not produced by the BBC. I've got a 1,000-piece puzzle on the Doctor Who episode guide. Never seen that before. Going way back here, I managed to find a Dalek vintage sweet cigarette box from 1965. So there you go. More on the way. And that's all for now. So if you want to see some of these items up close, you got to come to Doctoberfest for that. Of course, I field a lot of rumors out there on the classic hardcover front that people have said, I've swore I saw a third printing of Space War. Well, you may have swore at it or something of that nature, but one does not exist. By the way, if you do have one and it does exist, just send us a photo proof by sending us the photo of the cover, the spine, and the copyright page listing the printing. And you can share that with me at drwhocollectorspodcast@gmail.com. We'll include that on our hardcover guide. We'll bring notice to you at that. We'd love to hear from that. We're just trying to dispel some of the rumors out there. The only hardcover book to reach a third printing was Loch Ness Monster. Now we're discussing whether or not it actually had a second printing. Nobody's seen a second printing. So many first printings and third printings. Was it a publisher error and they put third printing on there? Or was there a second printing? We don't know. We're trying to find that out. So anyway, talking of hardcovers, on today's show, by continuing coverage of the classic Doctor Who hardcovers featuring the books of 1983 will be on the agenda today. And of course, hosting with me is always my good friend Tony Whitt, host of the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast. It's mostly Peter Davison stories, but stay tuned, you won't want to miss that. And if you're not a fan of FeedSpot, FeedSpot has ranked the top Doctor Who podcasts, and the top 90. I have moved up a couple notches here. I am now number 31 on that list. Thank you so much for your support. We moved up 5 spots since the last episode, so thank you so much. I also want to thank our patrons. We cannot exist without our patrons. Please join us at Patreon. That's patreon.com/Doctor Who Collectors Podcast altogether, and support us at least at the $15 level to get access to the video portions of our podcast. If you want to see my interview with Peter Purvis, which was a great interview, a wonderful gentleman and a true friend, he wished me a happy birthday the other day. It was my birthday the other day, but that's okay. But I got a special message from Peter Purvis, as well as Tasha Achilleos and Simon Fisher-Becker, Richard Ashton, Mickey Lewis, and a few other people from the Doctor Who world checked in on me. So that was wonderful. So go there to become a patron. Our theme song is Who's Doctor Who, composed by Barry Mason and Les Reed, performed by our friend Fraser Hines. And of course, you can catch Fraser Hines at Chicago TARDIS or Chicago, or most any convention. I think he comes with your ticket these days. You can get this podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Podbean, and many other providers. So if you want to share this with others and they don't use Apple, you can send them to one of the other places. We are a Direction Point Network podcast. So it's time for My Time. My Time is a chance to talk about anything pretty much, and I wanted to talk to my collector friends out there. There's a kind of a new thing popping up on eBay that people have asked me about, and I've even experimented buying a couple of these just to see what they're about. But I'm talking about unused Target book covers. Now, I've got a couple. The ones that I have here, I've got Inferno and a later printing of Doctor Who and the Zarbi. Now, from first glance here, they definitely look like they could be publisher unused covers, but I've got no documentation. Also, I took a book to a graphic designer friend of mine and said, could you create this from the book? And they said, absolutely. Take high-resolution scans of the front, the spine, and the back, put them all together in InDesign, print them out on this wonderful cardstock, and you too could have a unused Target cover. They're selling anywhere from $30 on up. I do have one that I can verify its legitimacy. It's a Alistair Pearson cover, and it was verified by Alistair Pearson himself. Which he doesn't do very often, so I give him kudos there. But anyway, I'm worried about these counterfeits, if they are indeed counterfeits. And I'm hoping collectors who are listening can chime in and say, no, these are legitimate. Or, where are they coming from? Who can document their origin and their value? Because if they are going for $30 and people are buying them, and I'm watching several of them on eBay. You have this option on eBay where you add to watch list. And I'll watch a bunch of them to see what happens. And some of them have not sold for a while. I bought one. I actually bought the Inferno, and the guy threw in the Zarbi for free, which I'm very appreciative of. And I have nothing against the seller. I think he was, whatever. I have no evidence of anything there. I'm not calling it outrageous or anything like that. I'm just trying to find out more information. So when I ask questions, I even asked, is there any documentation? No. Can you tell me the source? And he said, he really didn't know. He may have bought it from someone else. So I'd like to find out, are these real? Are they created, because I could probably create one in InDesign. I may even try and see what I come up with. The specs are easy. You just measure the book, measure the front, measure the spine, measure the back, put that all together mathematically, and you can get a dimension, and then do a high resolution scan, put it together, use Photoshop to smooth out any defects, and you could probably create your own unused cover. So I don't know, but I'm hoping some people will chime in. If you'd like to join this conversation, join us on Facebook at Doctor Who Collectors Podcast or on Instagram at Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, and let me know what your thoughts are on this, because I would love to know if these Target books are actually, Target covers are actually real. All right, that is my time. So after this break, we will have the main story and the most outrageous offer. Stay tuned.
Traveling the Vortex. Are you ready to embark on an epic journey through time and space? Join the thousands of Whovians around the world who've discovered Traveling the Vortex, the ultimate Doctor Who podcast for die-hard fans and curious newcomers alike.
Every week, we dive deep into the Whoniverse, discussing the episodes, theories, and hidden gems. We dissect the Doctor's adventures, share behind-the-scenes stories, and explore the legacy of this iconic show.
Traveling the Vortex brings fans together, fostering a global community of Whovians. Whether you're a fan of classic or new Who, there's something for everyone.
Join us on this incredible journey as we unravel the mysteries of time and space.
Don't miss out. Subscribe to Traveling the Vortex today on your favorite podcast platform.
Traveling the Vortex. Your ticket to adventure awaits.
Traveling the Vortex is a proud member of the Direction Point Podcast Network. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Hi, I'm Juliet.
And I'm Nathan.
Experience Doctor Who from the very beginning through a classic fan's eyes.
And through the eyes of a new Who fan.
Reminisce and relive those classic moments with Nathan as he offers fun insight.
Or experience them for the first time with Juliet as she dwells on social issues, history, fashion, and the size of a flashlight.
We're the Time Streams Podcast.
Find us on Spotify, Stitcher, or Apple Podcasts. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
We are going on a journey, a very long journey, through the world of the Target novelizations in publication order. Every week, we are looking at a new book, talking about Terrence Dicks, Malcolm Hulke, and all our Doctor Who novelization friends. Whatever you do, keep turning the pages. This is Jason Miller of the Doctor Who Literature Podcast, a member of the Direction Point Podcast Network, and you are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Up there is the scanner, those are the doors, that is a chair with a panda on it. Sheer poetry, dear boy.
And now it's time for the main story. This is a continuation of our coverage of the classic Doctor Who hardcovers that we have done now for several episodes. And so far, if you are attending class tonight, we have covered 1974 through 1982 with the imprints of Universal Tandem, which used to be Alan Wingate, Longbow, and W.H. Allen. So we now start today with 1983, where the W.H. Allen imprint is used exclusively. And so from the Doctor Who world here, it was not a great year with 11 books published compared to the 8 Target paperbacks with 2 reprints. The 2 paperback reprints being Abominable Snowman and The Web of Fear with new artwork. So again, just to brief you back on the history in case you're joining us for the first time, in 1975, a company called Universal Tandem was sold by a company called UPD to the conglomerate Howard and Wyndham. And the company was then renamed Tandem Publishing before merging quickly, like they weren't Tandem long enough to order letterhead. They merged with Howard and Wyndham, their house called W.H. Allen. And they became Wyndham Publications in 1976. And of course, in the next year in 77, the Wyndham identity was completely wiped out. And so the Tandem imprint was phased out later in 1980. So all surviving titles from that entire publishing library were printed under W.H. Allen's paperback imprint, which was called Star Books. The Target imprint, which was owned by W.H. Allen, survives until 1993, though in the last few years of that run, it was exclusively used for Doctor Who, but early on you could find Wurzel Gummidge and other books by Target. The Target imprint has been purchased by BBC Books and is currently being used on current Target books. The W.H. Allen Doctor Who run ends in 1988. But, of course, anytime I invoke the Doctor Who novelization, I've just been told that a time scoop was used in total violation of Gallifreyan law and brought to us here Professor Tony Whitt, the host and producer of the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, who assists us in this adventure. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Is that what that was? I thought it was just gas.
Well, I don't know. Depending on which version of the 5 Doctors you've watched recently, it's either a circling triangle or a shimmering thing that they used. I don't know. But
well, given the way they look in miniature inside it, I always thought they also had gas too. It looks very painful.
I'm not sure why they didn't contact me, and of course I've got a lot to say when we get to that book, but it's just, they could have done better with those little figures, because action figures were not being produced yet, but there were so many manufacturers out there that could have made a small run of figures for the BBC, but instead they looked like they got a bar of soap and started whittling. So, anyway, this one other thing. But anyway, in 1983, of course, 11 Doctor Who books were published, which is 2 more than the previous year, but almost 90% of the books focus on the Peter Davison run. There were no hardcover reprints this year and won't be until the last one is reprinted in 1985. And that's purely an interesting story, which you'll have to wait for that episode to hear. One book in this series was released as a compilation of stories never released to the United States. These books are extremely sought after, that you might have to take away Captain Briggs' bonus. I don't think she ever got paid
right.
to afford these guys. Again, the market for these is extremely volatile. They can be found in a couple different ways, though. We find them in ex-library condition. I have many of those. They're fine. They're great. That means they were pulled from a library, withdrawn from the collection, or stolen by a patron who really wanted it. And sometimes that happens. Or a retail store version or a non-library edition, publisher review copy, direct sales copy, a copy that you got from your bookstore that does not have any library stamps in it. Many of the titles we're going to talk about tonight were the first to be distributed in the United States, but according to our timeline in 1983, not for another 2 years, which means there were plenty of these books left over after 83 to make it that far. So speaking of 83, Tony, any memories that come back for you for that year?
Only the ones that I talked about on our Five Doctors podcast that I have very distinct memories of watching the Five Doctors the night of the anniversary.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
of course was 2 days before the Brits actually got it.
Yes, I know. Exciting.
Which they've never forgiven us for.
Nope.
And quite rightly so. And if you go to our episode for Five Doctors, you'll hear a little snippet of a recording that a friend of mine did of the pledge break for that night, where I won a runner-up prize, which turned out to be, spoiler alert, a Doctor Who hat.
Was it one of those ball caps with the diamond logo?
Yes.
We had those in my shop, and I thought, I wish I still had mine because they would be nice to have in the collection. But and I've only seen a few float around, but you probably don't still have yours, I'm guessing.
Actually, here's the thing.
Yeah.
I damaged my original one because I used to wear it, and finally got rid of it because it was in terrible shape. My friend, John Barton, who actually won the contest and sent me this recording, actually sent me the hat that he won as part of the package because he got all 3 prizes.
Wow.
And so I do have the hat, and I have never touched it or worn it. So it's actually in really good condition. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good thing, because those I don't see very many of those hats come up. I know they weren't made very well to start with. It's like kind of all that material that came out of the that time in the early 80s. It was the t-shirts and the hats, and a lot of that became part of the Barbara Elder empire, which is a whole nightmare of things that happened when I remember trying to order from them, and you could only order certain items wholesale. The rest you had to pay full price for, so you couldn't make any money off of it.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, what a way to do business. And there was nothing so corrupt until Spirit of Light. So that's still 2 years away. But anyway, let me our list to listeners here, let me give you a rundown. 83 was a big year. If you haven't figured it out, we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of Doctor Who in the midst of the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. And speaking of shameless plugs, my Patreon viewers, I am wearing the official, can't do it, it's reversed, the official Doctor Who polo for the 60th anniversary year, which you can get at the Who Shop in the UK. That's thewhoshop.com. They still have those available. My special thanks to the Who Shop for helping me get a hold of this polo. Anyway, in 1983, the 20th anniversary of the show, and it impacted not just the UK, but the United States as well. So here is what happened. So in February, this was a brilliant idea by John Nathan Turner, or not. The character for Purple Gilliam Brown is invented. And of course, it hasn't been cast yet, but they told us here that it was going to be an American. Turns out it wasn't, but that's how it goes. John Nathan Turner, by this time in February, had been to 4 U.S. conventions, which was pretty much the record for anybody who'd been to a convention at that time. The next month in March, Lionheart Productions continues to promote the 41 movie packages of Tom Baker to the annual NATP exhibit in Las Vegas, hosted in a special Doctor Who bar at the end of the universe. Oh, wow. It was given, the announcement was made at Longleat a few weeks later. The deal to sell third Doctor serials in the U.S. Had not been finalized. No mention of Pertwee in any of Lionheart's advertisement. So in April of 83, at the Easter weekend Longleat Festival, John Pertwee announced that his stories were going to be made available again. So there you go. I'm delighted to hear yesterday from John Nathan Turner, the American gentleman who's over here from Lionheart Distributing, and I gather that my stories are going to be shown in 85. Is it 85? John looks to John Nathan Turner, who nods. In 1985, after Peter's 26 and another 26, then they're taking all mine. So I can imagine John saying that. In fact, I may send that to Tim Traylor and see if he'll say that for us.
Oh, nice.
So by mid-83, the second Peter Davison series is made available for syndication. In June, 2 Davison seasons to offer, Lionheart releases a package of John Pertwee stories. The package only consisted of 14 stories, 73 episodes, to our disappointment that we started. That was the stories that started with Inferno.
Mm-hmm.
And then jumped to Claws of Axos. And
yes.
So we didn't get Mind of Evil because it was not in color. Went to Colony in Space. We did not get the Demons for some reason, even though it existed and had all the episodes. Day of the Daleks. We did not get Curse of Peladon. We got the Sea Devils, the Mutants, the Time Monster, the Three Doctors, and and I think the rest, except for Invasion of the Dinosaurs. So it was we were hoping Spearhead from Space, but that one existed in color, but they didn't get it for whatever reason. The 7 adventure seasons from season 10 and 11 had been previously sold to WGBX in 1977 and to 2 stations in Canada, but had not been available anywhere else. They were available, the Pertwee episodes were available either in individual episodes or in omnibus film editions. So depending on where you lived, you saw them one way or the other. So I'm not going to read I just basically read the whole list of episodes that were done. And unfortunately, some of the episodes, they do address that. Later history says that the reason they didn't release some of those other ones was the poor state of the tapes that they recovered in 81. They hadn't been restored yet, and they weren't. That wasn't done until the next year, and they still felt it wasn't broadcast quality. So, and then to convert the tape to NTSC resulted in a terrible conversion. So John Pertwee then goes on a tour in the United States, attending all kinds of conventions in July of 83, accompanied with Elizabeth Sladen. And if you want to find the interview, it is in Starlog magazine number 79, where the cover is dated February of 84. Also in that same month, a little company in Secaucus, New Jersey called Lyle Stewart, very important for you Target book people out there, becomes the exclusive distributor of Target books in the United States. Target then starts to reprint all back issues with Lyle Stewart's name printed on the back of the cover. And they retail from $2.50.
Oh.
So that was pretty cool. Radio Times releases a 20th anniversary special, and that's this one here. This was basically had a big release in England. This is the actual Radio Times version that they struck a deal with Starlog to run an American version.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one everybody's seen, but not very many people have seen the original because this one never made it to the United States. So this was a really big deal for that anniversary. Scorpio International releases a video called Doctor Who in America. Did you see that one, Tony? Back in the day? Yeah.
Yes, I did.
And the July 83 issue of TV Guide had a half-page feature called Happy Birthday to Who, and mentions the upcoming 20th anniversary issue of 5 Doctors. On the 23rd of November 1983, the 5 Doctors makes its world premiere 2 days ahead of the UK transmission, as we mentioned earlier. Of course, I did watch it live that night on the Wednesday evening. It was about 7 o'clock in the evening, I believe. And it was just glued to the TV for all 90 minutes. That was just a moment to really savor, because we wouldn't get that USA premiere status until the 96 movie, which also came out before the UK transmission.
Right.
So as a result of this special screening, Who is later sold to more stations in the United States than ever were before. Doctor Who was almost available across the country. Then in November 26, 27 of 83, that was the Thanksgiving weekend. You know, that's an important weekend to remember as well. Spirit of Light presents The Ultimate Celebration. And I remember these flyers. These were full-page flyers. This is the front side and back side together for this convention held at the Hyatt Regency downtown O'Hare Airport. I got down there for one day on the Saturday. It was an amazing thing. Here is the list of people who were there. We had Tom Baker, John Pertwee, Patrick Troughton, which, by the way, that was his very first visit to the United States to attend a convention. Peter Davison, Nicholas Courtney, Ian Martyr, John Nathan Turner, Anthony Ainley, John Leeson, Janet Fielding, Elizabeth Sladen, Carol Ann Ford, Mark Strickson, Sarah Sutton, Louise Jameson, Mary Tam, Nicola Bryant, Fiona Cumming, Ian Fraser, Gary Downey, Julie Brennan, Terry Nation, Peter Moffat, and Matthew Waterhouse. Now, as I read that list, my listeners, if you want to go back a few episodes to my interview with Peter Purvis, I asked him about this, and he looked back at me and said, nobody called. Nobody called him. Nobody called Annika. Nobody called Michael Craze. Nobody called Fraser Hines. He's not on this list. They said, nobody knows those people. So they were left off. But Carol Ann Ford was, because she was in the 5 Doctors. Even though a lot of those other people were in the 5 Doctors in cameo roles, they did not invite them. So what was interesting about the convention in Chicago, that the location filming for Caves of Androzani was completed 1 week before that convention. So John Nathan Turner wrapped filming and got on a plane for Chicago. And he flew directly to the United States from the location. So this is at this event that Jonathan Turner met Patrick Troughton and asked him to appear in season 22, which he did. And that was a really interesting meeting there. I met Jonathan Turner at that convention, a very nice man. I know he was not liked by very many people, but he was a very kind man to his fans. And one of the things I remember notably was at the charity auction when, one of John Pertwee's tuxedos went for like $4,000, and Tom Baker's, one of his original scarves, went for $4,000. Jonathan Turner at the end of it said took the Hawaiian shirt off his back and it went for $60.
Oh my God!
The money went to charity. So.
Was he wearing something underneath it?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
he was a layers guy. I only went to the Saturday session because at the time in '83 I was 14 years old, I believe, and I just couldn't afford it. Plus my parents were a little worried about me going downtown by myself. I took my brother with me. He was like in heaven seeing Doctor Who on the big screen. So what a great time that was. And then, of course, my memories of '83 include the fact it was my freshman year in high school. So it was a big deal watching the Five Doctors. We got the first season of Davison finally with some Pertwees and Tom Bakers. And they actually showed the Five Doctors in between Ark in Space and Sontaran Experiment. So the previous Sunday showed Ark in Space. The Wednesday was Five Doctors. And next Sunday you got Sontaran. So that was pretty cool. 11/27/83. So there you go. So on to the books of this time, the hardcovers. In 1983, all the Doctor Who hardcovers will be on the WH Allen imprint and are printed with a laminated cover. The majority of them will have photo covers, but a handful of them have artist renditions. All will feature the neon logo or the Sutton logo, as it's been designed by, in various colors. So we kick off the year in January of 1983 with a book called Doctor Who Time Flight by Peter Grimwade. The cover is a photo cover. 4,500 copies were printed of this. This was the biggest print run in a long time. Book had a price of £5.25. If we convert the 1983 price to today's in dollars, it would be $18.45. This photo was actually taken from Doctor Who magazine. And I don't have the actual magazine in my library, but here's the photo. It's the exact photo. I'll hold them both up for comparison here. And so they didn't go far looking for different photos of Peter Davison for that. They were, by the way, according to the research, there were limited photos to choose from because Peter Davison only did a handful of photo shoots for things. And for the first time, the paperback version of this book was not released until 3 months after this. So we didn't get that till March. The original audiobook was set to be narrated by Matthew Waterhouse, but the company that was going to do it, called Audio Go, went out of business in 2013, and they told Matthew, sorry, we're not going to do it. But eventually the 2021 audiobook was read by Peter Davison. This book is really not that hard to find. You can pay about $100 or less, and sometimes a little more for a copy in non-library condition. This is a original mint condition copy that I had from 1986. It was part of the U.S. distribution from Bundles from Britain, and you find, if you have one of these catalogs floating around, it's on page 2, and it cost $14 back in 1986. So my copy is one of those that is from that era. The binding is still good. So this was not too long ago for the Target Book Club. How did Peter Grimwade fare here?
It was episode 135. Dalton gave it a 2. I gave it a 0. My first and only 0. And J.G. McQuarrie, originally from Talking Who to You, but now of Talking Trek to You, gave it negative 17,428, but actually 1. Nobody liked this book.
I do remember listening to that episode. I was cracking up.
There's nothing to recommend it, unfortunately.
It's a shame. And of course, I didn't care too much for the TV story either. It seemed to, the big reveal of, Khalid being so stupid, and it turns out he's the master. And I'm like, I just didn't care for it. But now I understand if nobody was buying this book and 4,500 copies, we got 150 or 200 copies of Time Flight in 1985. So I believe you can still get it off of DoctorWhoStore.com. He probably still has some from that original stock. But it just didn't do very well. And this is a time when W.H. Allen is really starting to look at their sales and go, do we really need to do this many hardcovers? Nobody's buying them. We're shipping them to the United States. And it isn't too long. They get the books go to Lyle Stewart in 85, and in 86, they're out. They said, nope, we're out. They sold the entire thing to Bundles from Britain. So we sold them out. I sold them till I sold the company to Gene, and Gene took whatever is left, and he's still got them in his store. So it's kind of sad how that worked. On to February, we get Doctor Who and Meglos, or no, there's no and, it's just Meglos, by Terrence Dix with another great cover by Andrew Skilleter. Gotta love that. One of the few artist covers for this month. Only 3, by the way, he's a listener. So the great Andrew Skilleter. Thank you. Sorry, I forgot that. 3,000 copies were printed. And by the way, this book is significant. It is the last 4th Doctor story to be novelized. That was it. Rights could not be attained for Pirate Planet, City of Death, or Shada. So that would be that. This book was part of the U.S. distribution and sold for $14 in 1986. And this is my copy. And it is still it still makes that noise when you open it just a little bit. So it's still in great shape. You can find this pretty well. I've seen it for 80 to 100, sometimes 30. It depends, because I think a lot of these still exist and float around. Non-libraries, plenty of those to be had. So what was the judgment on Meglos?
Again, well, it wasn't as bad as Time Flight. That was episode 122.
Okay.
Elton gave it 2.5 stars. Allison gave it a 2, saying that it was not too taxing.
That's good for her.
Yes, definitely. And I gave it a 2.5, saying that it was not a good story, but it was still saved by Terrence Dix, or at least as much as he could save it.
True. So not dry as a cactus, as they say.
Right.
Meglos. Sorry, my favorite character in Meglos is that poor Earth guy.
Yeah.
In the 3-piece suit, who's trying to deal with this whole thing because he got nabbed on his way home from work or something like that.
Right.
And I just thought that, pure for a season that Tom Baker really didn't like filming, that was some comic relief. But on sad though, that was the last one they did, and they didn't even do all of them at that point. So it's kind of the way that goes. In March of 1983, we get Doctor Who Castrovalva, Christopher H. Bidmead, and a photo cover. 3,000 copies were printed. As soon as I got this book, I totally recognized where the picture came from. And it is from the very first Doctor Who magazine I ever bought. Number 70. I have several copies of these. I have one that's signed by Peter Davison. I read this like cover to cover 19, 20, 30 times when I got it, because I thought I had never seen Doctor Who magazine before, but I bought this in 1981. But you could see the photo is exactly from that photo session. It's very close. So they were taking photos from Doctor Who magazine, which I thought was really interesting there. Let's see. The book, of course, was part of the U.S. distribution in 1986. Bundles from Britain had a price of $14. And this is the copy I had from that time period. So I've seen the book for anywhere from $75 to $100 in new condition. I've seen it for $40 or less for ex-library. There are a few of those that float around. Basically, that was my prerogative of taking the book. When I was the store owner, I got to pick what I could. If it was low stock, I couldn't take one. The next book was proof of that. But what did the club think of Castrovalva?
That one was surprising. That was episode 129. Dalton gave it a 3.5. He said he wasn't as impressed with it as he was with Legopolis, even though it was still good. Allison gave it a 3.75 and said that she liked it as much as The Green Death and Colony in Space, which are her two touchstones for what good novelizations are.
Okay.
J.G. McCory was with us again. He gave it a 4. And I gave it a 3.5 because, again, it's good. It's really good, but it's not quite as good as Legopolis, which is an excellent novel.
Yeah, that is a good book. As far as for me, that story still sticks in my head as the first Peter Davison story, and it was just an amazing story to watch. Just because, and I still watch it today as I saw it nostalgically. I mean, it's not a bad story, but again, Legopolis was really well done, and I was hoping that it would continue. And you could run. I've seen stations run Legopolis and Castrovalva in one movie, so you can, because the scenes were all done at the same time. But yeah, that's one of my favorite stories. On to April, and this is one of the few times when a book is published in story order. So we get Doctor Who 4 to Doomsday by Terrance Dicks, photo cover, 3,000 copies printed, and not really much to say about it. It was part of the U.S. distribution, but we only got 10 copies, so I did not take one. This is an ex-library copy. $14 was the price. Not very easy to find these days, so you might pay $100 or more for a copy. The story was not too many, like I said, very few hardcover books especially were in story order. The only ones that I remember, Space War and Planet of the Daleks were done in succession, and there might have been one more, but that's a pretty rare thing. Plus we get not such a great photo on the front. The Davison outlined where they cut out the photo with the green guy. So okay, I kind of know where this is going because I remember the episode, but Tony, where did the club fall on 4 to Doomsday?
Oh, yes, we hated this book. It was episode 130. Dalton, who generally gives fairly high scores to everything, gave it a 1.5, which at that point was his lowest score to date. There is a later book coming up, which is actually his lowest. This is the period when Dalton went dark, shall we say. Allison also gave it a 1.
Okay.
And I gave it between a 0.5 and a 1.
Wow.
Because it is a perfect storm of a bad script with a very uncaring Terrance Dicks trying to do his best with it, but you cannot make a purse out of a silk. Well, can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, and it's definitely that.
Definitely that, yeah. Not my favorite TV story. Kind of a letdown after Castrovalva. And I know that this one was filmed first before, I believe, if I'm right.
Yes.
They did 4 to Doomsday, then they did Castrovalva. So yeah, it's so I'm sure that the whole new to the Doctor Who thing was part of that, but I did not care for 4 to Doomsday. It's not a story I repeat very often. In May of 1983, we get Doctor Who Earthshock by Ian Marter. Another photo cover and 3,000 copies. The photo features the Doctor holding a gun from episode 3, which is very uncharacteristic of the Doctor. It's very controversial. And of course, this was, of course, not to give away the appearance of the Cybermen. The original photo cover had Cybermen in it. And they said, oh, we can't tell anybody that they're Cybermen. But the book, of course, came out after the story aired, so it wouldn't have mattered. And it's one of the few books that doesn't have Cyberman in the title. And whoops, my cable got loose there. All right, live podcast, everybody. So there we go. So no Cyberman in the title, including Wheel in Space, 10th Planet, fall in that category as well. Despite the book was part of the U.S. distribution, we got so few copies. I think it was like 8 or 9 copies. So it's a very difficult book to find. This one I got by way of Australia. My friend Jonathan Ruffle helped me get a hold of this. I didn't buy it directly from him. I got it from somebody who refused to ship it to me in the United States. So Jonathan was happy to get it and reship it to me. So it still cost me less than the other alternative. So it was a nice deal. This book did sell for $14 in 1986, and all copies of Earthshock sold out at the first convention we did. I remember that well. So there are none currently for sale anywhere. How did Earthshock do?
Well, it was episode 134. Dalton gave it a 3.5. He said that the book made him cry, and in fact, he teared up during the podcast.
Oh, wow.
So that tells you something about how much it hit him.
Yeah.
Allison was also hit by it. She gave it a 3.5. I gave it a tentative 4 because there are so many improvements on the story, even though there are a few things missing.
Mhm.
And Jim Sangster was on that episode, and he specifically gave it a crumpled 5-pointed star for excellence.
Very well done. Yeah, and that's still one of the stories that sticks out in my head from watching it the first time and noting, it wasn't very common for them to kill off companions in the series. It only happened a few times before, and not since the first Doctor, I believe. So so Sarah Kingdom and Katrina being the other ones. So this was kind of a shock, and of course the very powerful fourth ending credits with no music and just a crumpled star, and the whole shock. And by the way, I give total kudos to the TARDIS crew actors, Peter, Janet Fielding, Sarah Sutton. Just their reaction was, like they didn't tell him that, he's leaving or whatnot. And it just was really powerful. I remember reading this one too, and it hit me too the same way, because it is a good book. It's a good story, and it's one of those. Of course, we didn't know the Cybermen were coming out either, and that was a nice surprise. So wow, what a story! In June of 1983, Doctor Who, we get Doctor Who Terminus by John Lydecker, not his real name, Stephen Gallagher, and another photo cover with the late great Valentine Dial. And if you don't know who that is, and you listen to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy radio show, he is the voice of Deep Thought, and I think one of the guys when he sees the total perspective vortex, he's the guide for that. So there you go. This had a price increase to £5.50 and 3,000 copies. The paperback also got a price increase with this release. This book was not included with U.S. distribution, so it is not very hard to find. We don't know why it was out at the time, but maybe they didn't have any copies, so we have no idea. So this book can go for as high as 200 or more, depending on the condition. I'm trying to see if this one is a mint copy. I don't know how long. I've had it for a long time. I don't remember what I paid for it. And that's about all. Of course, this is the story where Nyssa departs and does a little striptease on camera. So how did the club view Terminus?
We actually loved that book. Dalton gave it a 4. Allison gave it a 3.5, said it felt more like a novel than any of the books that we'd read up to that point. And I gave it a 4.5 only because I had previously given Warrior's Gate a 4.75. And I like Terminus, not quite as much as Warrior's Gate, but it is still just an amazing book that is so much better than the TV version.
I agree. Yeah, there's so many. I mean, it was cleaned up quite a bit. And Terminus, the TV episode, I liked it when I saw it. It's not one I rewatch. But yeah, and an interesting storyline. I think they could have done better, but of course it was 1983. So what can you do? Yeah, this one does not have the Lyle Stewart stamp on the back, by the way, just so you know, it was not included in U.S. distribution. The next book also in June, and we're not sure why, but this was a rare opportunity. W.H. Allen released a compilation book, and it's called The Dalek Omnibus, and it is only in hardcover. Terrence Dix, artwork by Andrew Skilleter. And you can get this print, by the way, from Andrew Skilleter. It's a wonderful print. It features 3 stories, including Dalek Invasion of Earth, Planet of the Daleks, and Day of the Daleks. And the book sold for £6.95. Not included in U.S. distribution. We don't have a print number, but I'm guessing it's one shy of a shit ton, because I have found so many copies of this book for sale. It is now going in mint condition for roughly $30 to $35.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not something you will have to look hard for. If you go to Abe Books or eBay and type in Dalek Omnibus and the W.H. Allen, there will be a lot of them, and you can find one for very little money. This one is in mint condition. I paid $6 for this one a long time ago. The reviews of these 3 stories you can find either in past episodes of my podcast or in past episodes of the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast. We don't need to go back with a review, but this was, by the way, the only reprint compilation of its kind from W.H. Allen. My guess it had something to do with the 20th anniversary. There was no advertising to corroborate that. It just got flooded to bookstores, and I'm guessing, I'm going to put a guess that they did 10,000 of these based on the availability. And they could have had more if they sent it to the United States. I mean, we didn't even know it existed. It wasn't in any of the catalogs. Not even the W.H. Allen catalogs had this book. But it's a little bit thicker. It's about a pound more than the regular books. But just look out there and you can find it. What a nice thing. We go on to July of 1983, and we get Doctor Who and Arc of Infinity by Terrence Dix, along with a great photo cover of Peter Davison and Michael Gough. 3,000 copies were printed, and that's about all there is to do with that. The book was not part of U.S. distribution, and is not very hard to find. This mint copy I happened upon some years ago. The only thing is it does have somebody's name written in the front, but that's not a big deal. It's still very tight. So good luck on that. But what was the review on Arc of Infinity?
Arc of Infinity was episode 136. And that was indeed Dalton's lowest score ever. He gave it a 1.
Oh.
Allison gave it a 1, except that she said we've read so much worse, but somehow she gave it a 1. J.G. McCoy was with us again, and he gave it a 2. And I gave it a 2, if only because I hate Time Flight more.
Yeah.
That's exactly why it got as high as it did.
This was the story this was one of the first Peter Davison stories I saw that was pirated in the United States. It was a camera copy, a very flickery copy that about a week after it finished, it ended up over here, and many of the fan clubs got a copy, and we were, huddled around a TV watching it, and it was kind of hard to watch that way. And then when I saw it clear as a bell later, it didn't really improve things. Yes. Didn't really improve things. And sadly, they could not. The original actor, I believe the original actor passed away for Omega. I'm gonna have to double check that. So if I'm wrong, don't hit me on Facebook, guys. I'll figure it out. But I missed that roaring voice, and it was kind of different. Of course, Michael Gough, an amazing actor. And of course, husband of Annika Wills, I believe. So just the celestial toy maker himself. But what a great return for that. That's about all there is. And lots of it happens on Gallifrey. And one little side note too, the appearance of a future Doctor as a counselor, as a guard, Colin Baker, is in the story. So, and that's a pretty cool tidbit for that. All right. Moving on to August of 1983, we get Modron Undead by Peter Grimwade, a photo cover once again, 3,000 copies printed. The original photo for this was supposed to be Peter Davison with Nicholas Courtney on the cover, but it was scrapped. So this photo is from Terminus. So this is the only book that used a photo from a different story. We're not sure why. I guess they couldn't decide if they were going to use the older Brigadier or the made up younger Brigadier or a cropped younger Brigadier photo. They couldn't agree with, I guess, Nicholas Courtney's agent, or they didn't like the photo. It's not clear. The research goes all over the place on that. In October of 1983, this is important, that W.H. Allen signed its distribution deal with Lyle Stewart. So the paperback of this title was the very first paperback to have the USA information printed on the back. Not the hardcover, but the because hardcovers didn't come for another year.
Right.
But the paperback is the first, Madron Undead first edition is the first book to have that stamp. So collectors, if you're looking at your collection, and there were a couple printings of this book in paperback, and the later ones don't have it because Lyle Stewart didn't stay in business very long, sadly. And of course, hardcover books come later, ultimately unsuccessful. Lyle Stewart could not get rid of them, so they ended up literally dumping them on Bundles from Britain in 1986. So that would be, and there would be no more hardcovers imported. However, after there were times that you will find later books with Lyle Stewart price tags, and that's because, like, a copy of The Smugglers that I have has a Lyle Stewart price tag. Those price tags are attached in England at the distribution warehouse. So they put a bunch of Lyle Stewart stickers on stuff, and like, well, we're not sending to them anymore. Oh, okay, well, never mind. They didn't bother peeling them off, so they just left it. Amazingly enough, this book was not part of the inventory when it was sold to me, so we did not have it. But my copy is a mint copy imported. You can find this book for anywhere from $200 on up, because it is a little bit more difficult to find since it did not reach USA distribution. So how did the club like Modern Undead?
Well, it's a bit of a middling book, Modern Undead. Dalton gave it a 3.5. Allison actually gave it a fairly high score. She gave it a 3.25. I gave it a 3.75, almost a 4, because again, the book is really quite the improvement on the televised story.
Yeah,
surprisingly good.
That's good. That's good, because I did like the TV story, and I loved Nicholas Courtney being in it. I wish they could have brought him back for more, but I know his in later years his health was an issue, and his last appearance in the Sarah Jane adventure, you could see how aged he was, and he died shortly after that. But what a great kind of a almost a character that almost didn't last, but became so integral to the part of Doctor Who universe, you know, the Brigadier. And it was nice that the Fifth Doctor got to interact. So it is one of my favorite Davison stories for that reason. Of course, in September and October, they didn't release any books because they were hunkering down for the 20th anniversary celebration coming up in November. So in November of 1983, we get Doctor Who, The Five Doctors. And we get a cover by Andrew Skilleter. It's a beautiful cover, the silhouettes. Now, one of the things that happened here, I'll get to that in a second. Anyway, this book was purposefully withheld from U.S. distribution. It could not get it. And I'm not sure why. I tried to order it, and they said, sorry, that book's not available. But it's out, it's there, we know about it. They won't sell it to us. So this book was not the hardcover edition, and the first prints of the paperback were not allowed into the United States. So that was my Lyle Stewart rep back then. The book, of course, was rushed to publication by W.H. Allen to be ready by November. Terrence Dix had to work from his submitted scripts, which differed slightly from the TV version. The book was released slightly ahead of the broadcast, which irritated John Nathan Turner. Didn't affect anything here because we didn't get it. Copies of the paperback were seen 2 weeks before the broadcast. And I think I remember listening to your episode on that where somebody said, yeah, I read it before the broadcast several times. So there you go. Despite the paperback getting the first edition and second edition treatments on the cover, the hardback will not be reprinted. It was only a one-timer. Only one hardcover gets a reprinting, which was, by the way, just a little spoiler, that 85 reprint was at the strong behest of Nathan Turner because the paperback got a second edition. We got to do a second cover for the hardcover. They were both released in the same month in the same year. So it's just and you can't tell the difference between the two covers. You have to open up the book and it'll say second printing. So it's one of those. To save on royalty costs, because pictures of the actors, they were starting to get wise to the whole thing here. Andrew Skilleter used silhouettes to save money, the cheap bastards. They also got a price increase of £5.95 for this book, which they did get. And again, no U.S. delivery. The cover print, by the way, and variants of this cover print is available at andrewskilleter.com. Big plug for my friend Andrew there. He also got a very interesting commission that same month to do a cover for the Radio Times magazine. Mm-hmm. And he actually went to the reception for it, got a nice plaque for this. And of all the Doctor Who covers to be on the Radio Times, this is Andrew's only one. And it's a good cover. It's a really good drawing. And you can get posters of this on his website as well. And he was on fire that year for that. Expect to pay anywhere from $200 on up, but I'm going to let a little secret here. My mint copy of the 5 Doctors is signed by Terrence Dix.
Oh my. Goodness.
We This Pagan was crying when I showed him that. But I did not have him personally sign it. When I bought the book, it did not say it was autographed. Maybe the guy didn't open it. It's like my copy of Doctor Who and the Cybermen that had the page stuck. And when I opened the page, it was signed by Michael Craze, which I thought was pretty cool. But the book can go for anywhere from $200 and up in non-library condition. There are lots of ex-library copies floating around. And of course, you notice on the cover, it doesn't say first edition like it does on the paperback. It just has that cover. And again, the cheap bastards, not part of U.S. distribution. So anyway, how did the story hold up for you guys?
This is our most recently released episode. It's 142, just before we go on hiatus. In honor of the 5 Doctors, we had 5 critics.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we had Dalton, who gave it a 3.5, Allison, who gave it a 2.5. We had myself, who gave it a 3.5. J.G. McQuarrie was also joining us, and he gave it a 3.5. And Jim Sangster thanked us all for our scores because his score was 3.141565.
I do remember that. Yeah.
So happy to be able to make that joke.
Yes, that's a great one. Conductor, it's as easy as pie. Pie? Apple? Strudel? Oh, yes. Oh, that would have been a Troughton line. Oh, goody, pie.
Right.
So many lost moments there. Yeah, it's a good book. It's a great story. I even saw the Mystery Science Theater treatment of it.
Oh, yes.
Caught that actually it was funny. I saw it in the theater and they were doing it live, and when they panned the audience, I saw Galen Jenkins in the front row.
Really?
So I'm like, hey, I know that guy. Yeah, he's in the fourth Doctor outfit and all that. Great guy. He always assists me when I do the collecting panels, and he'll be with me at Doctoberfest this October, and I'll mention that in just a moment. But 5 Doctors on hardcover, extremely hard to find in mint condition, and if you can find a copy with Terrence's autograph on it, even better, because you can't get that autograph any longer. Sadly for that. And so we are down to the final book in December of 1983, and we end with a robust novel of Kinda. By Terrence Dix, with another photo cover, 3,000 copies. And this was the final book to use a photo cover. So you can all go, thank God. Well, the reason for that is Peter Davison's agent was finally getting wise to this little scheme and demanded money for all these photo covers, which W.H. Allen reluctantly paid and said, well, that's over. Sorry about that. Again, the cheap bastards. But Kinda was not part of U.S. distribution. This book is not very easy to find. I have an ex-library copy here, but it's still a very tight binding. It's like, I think it never got checked out. I was trying to see what library it was, but it doesn't say. They sold it for 10p, by the way. So it's got that little 10p in there. And if you see that, it's just, so somebody got this for like roughly a quarter. But you'll pay probably about $200 to $250 for one of these if you can find one in decent condition. This one actually looks really good because I had this on the shelf for quite some time, but didn't realize it seemed a little weird when I held it up to the light and realized there was a plastic coating, a plastic cover along the cover, and it wasn't taped to the book. It was like folded under. So I used my special library scissor tool and I took that off, and the cover looks like it's in really good shape. It really protected it. And of course, it goes into a Bags Unlimited bag. Shameless plug for my sponsor. So that's one of those things. It's just nice. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed, my listeners and everybody, I had a complete set of those books for the very first time. So 83 was complete. In fact, I've got 83 all the way to the end of the run. So I won't be saying don't have this one, but I've got them all now. So that's I'm only missing like 5 or 6 titles from the back run. So what did the club think of Kinda?
That was episode 131. Dalton gave it a 4 because he could tell that it was something unique, which it was.
Mhm.
Allison gave it a 3 for the same reason, and I gave it a 3.5 because it was still lacking something, but it was still pretty good.
Yeah, and I liked it too because it was a different story. It was a different kind of story, and the use of the Mara, which will ultimately come back in another episode, which is really quite something. And I enjoyed this one. I really did. I thought it was a really good story. And of course, back when these came out, we were excited for every Davison story to come out. That's just, we were like, it's a new Doctor, it's a new thing. But that takes care of the 1983 hardcovers. If you'd like to own a set of these, good luck. Some of them are very hard to find, but not impossible. I have a complete set, but I had to settle for some ex-library copies, which I'm not picky, but I have friends who only get mint copies, and that's pretty lofty, but very difficult to do. So based on my estimates of price and actual sale prices of these books, a total set for 1983 would cost you roughly $1,635. Still expensive for 11 books. And that's based on the estimates, which is a little cheaper than last year, by the way. My advice, of course, to all collectors, when you encounter an auction that has a negotiating rate, try to negotiate, but be fair. Don't be unreasonable. You won't get even looked at. You'll find some of these titles at Abe's Used Books, but those prices tend to be a little higher. So you might pay a little bit more than it's worth there because those sellers really know what they're doing and they're trying to get the money from you. You might get lucky on an eBay, but beware of price gouging. Beware of sellers who are unscrupulous. Watch the Facebook groups. My list of respected sellers, including my friend Tony Whitt here, who's selling off some books himself, Dale Santos, Jonathan Ruffle, David Russell, and there's a few others out there that really know what they're doing and will really go out of their way to make sure that you get a good deal. Some of these copies can be found new at DoctorWhoStore.com, but you might be paying a little bit more there because these books are from the original Bundles from Britain inventory. And I know that because I sold Bundles from Britain to Gene Smith back in 1988, and he runs Alien Entertainment. So he got all the inventory. So that's how that worked. And of course, sometimes you can find them at Who North America. And as of this taping, Doctor Who Store has the following titles. They have Meglos for 125, Castrovalva for 400, a little bit more than my estimate. Kinda is 125, which isn't too bad. Time Flight for 145, which is probably way too much for that book. And Arc of Infinity for 145, also too much for that book. So if you really need a copy in mint condition and you don't mind paying a little bit more, Doctor Who Store has them, and you can get them while they last. So there you go. My special thanks, of course, to my good friend, Tony Whitt, host and producer of the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast. You'll probably find both of us at Chicago TARDIS this November for the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. And of course, currently the Target Book Club is on hiatus. Any notion as to when you'll return to the air?
Oh, we're going to be back at the beginning of November.
Perfect.
So you'll get an episode covering Harry Sullivan's War, which will be at the beginning of that month. And then our Chicago TARDIS episode is going to be Warriors of the Deep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Big title there.
Something to look forward to. Yes.
Yeah, I'll try to be at the taping. I know that weekend is crazy schedule wise, but if you can't wait for Chicago TARDIS in November, then join me for Collision on October 21st down in Canby, Indiana, which is just outside Indianapolis, where this collector collides with a companion by the name of Sophie Aldred, who plays Ace, for a wonderful Doctor Who festival day. Also down there, this pagan will be there with his props and costumes and things. He's got some pretty cool props from the series. I don't know how he gets some scripts that authors have just sent him. I don't know. He just asks and they say, okay. Like, what a way to go. Of course, Keith and Janny will have a shuttle bus running from there to the Who North America store. And that's a pretty incredible store. It has a museum. It has a wonderful, my favorite part of the museum is when Keith tells me, well, you've got one of those, but I don't. Gotta keep working. So by the way, tickets are still available. There's also, you can have dinner with Sophie on Friday night or brunch on Sunday morning. It's a great deal. Of course, you also can have dinner with me or brunch with me, but I'm not the headliner. So, but I'm a guest. So it's really exciting to be on the bill with somebody like Sophie, and she's been super nice so far. Our future episodes, of course, will continue our classic hardcovers after the Target Book Club returns from hiatus, but don't worry, we're not going on hiatus. We've got lots to talk about. I promised a story on the Blue Spines. Blue Spines are smiling at me, nothing but Blue Spines. Blue Spines. We're going to talk about Missing Adventures. We've got lots of emails, and also the debacle with the 14th Doctor screwdriver will be discussed in depth. It was a horrible rollout and still continues to be a headache for many people who ordered them from Character Online. And I'll just give you a preview of that, because usually when something like that comes out, I put an order in for 2 just because I want to take one out and keep one in the box. Well, I got 1 and I was like, what the heck? So I wrote to their customer service, nothing. Day later, I wrote again. I tried to call them, but the call could not complete. For some reason, international dialing is hit and miss. But finally, 2 weeks later, I get an email back from customer service. Oh, we're so sorry. We'll send you out right away. This was 3 weeks ago. I got it today. So I can, I'll just pull it out real quick here so you can see. This is the online version. I've also got a retail version coming, which is in blue packaging for this. This is the first time, by the way, in a long time that a prop is released prior to its appearance, because this hasn't made screen appearance yet. But it actually was quite reasonable. I think it was $30. So it wasn't too bad at all. But there you go. You can follow us, of course, on Instagram at Doctor Who Collectors to see full cover art of all of these hardcovers. And of course, see the full list of hardcovers at DoctorWhoCollectors.com with updated pricing information and additional research that is being done across many platforms to provide a complete history of the Doctor Who novelizations. Of course, you can watch this episode with the cover art and watching our wonderful conversation, and of course Tony's beautiful daughter in that picture there on Patreon with a $15 subscription. If you have photos or proof of life of books we don't talk about or say don't exist, you can email those photos to Doctor Who Collectors Podcast at gmail.com with hardcover photos in the subject line. Thank you once again for being here, Tony.
Thank you for having me.
And stay tuned for the most outrageous offer.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Alison Fitz-Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast on the Direction Point Podcast Network. Keep collecting.
Hi, I'm Rupert Booth.
I am known as Paul Ferry.
And my name is Barry Williams. Together, we host Time Ram.
Time Ram's a cruel mistress.
It's a random number generator.
That also.
We roll a number from 1 to 30, and that's our Doctor. Then 1 to 300 for the story, and then we ram them together. Even if it doesn't make sense.
Cruel, I tell you.
Time Ram. Putting the wrong Doctors in the wrong stories, so you don't have to. You're listening to
the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast.
You are invited on an adventure across all of time and space, in a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson,
Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
Explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse on shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point Network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors podcast. Keep collecting.
The Vervoids are probably the best dirty joke in Doctor Who.
They're hermaphroditic plants.
A lot of plants are.
So there you go. It's based on science.
No, they'll ship anything.
There are probably 11 and handle shippers out there. You just have to drill a hole where his mouth is, and you're all set.
You know he needs the room. I've seen it in pictures.
I'm not saying you're not a fan. I'm saying you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Doctor Who gives a drunken Doctor Who podcast for the end times.
All my travellings throughout the universe, I have battled against evil, against power-mad conspirators. I should have stayed here. The oldest civilization. Decadent, degenerate, and rotten to the core. Power-mad conspirators, Daleks, Sontarans, Cybermen. They're still in the nursery compared to us. 10 million years of absolute power. That's what it takes to be really corrupt.
And now it's time for the most outrageous offer. An outrageous offer is an offer about a Doctor Who item, a Doctor Who related item, or something that seems a little bit crazy priced. So today we have a book. It's a collection. It's the Doctor Who Dave Gibbons collection. And it's the Tom Baker on the front cover. And it looks like there's Ogrons and things on the front. Just says Dave Gibbons collection. So anyway, the ISBN is 1613773471. IDW publishing in 2012, not, but roughly 11 years ago. This is being sold by Big Bill's Books of Austin, Texas. Has good seller rating, but this book is used, and there's very little other information, but the asking price is $2,585.96 with $3 shipping. So found that on Abe's Books. That's where it was sent to me, and so I did some research. I found a copy of this on eBay for anywhere from $30 to $40. So definitely not. I know I didn't see any of these over the top, as far as, and it doesn't say autographed by him or anything like that. Of course, if it is autographed, maybe a little bit more, but not $2,585. There's also a new one you can buy on Abe Books for $47.65. And that's from Gridfried in North Las Vegas. So definitely that price, don't pay that price. That's crazy. And of course, I will have screenshots of that and the links on my website for you to check out if they last that long. Sometimes they get pulled down. But if you see an item out there that's priced a little too high or crazy, give us an email at drwhocollectorspodcast@gmail.com and we will do our research. Well, that wraps it up for the most outrageous offer, and that wraps it up for the Doctor Who Collectors podcast. Thank you for listening. I want to especially thank my guest today, Mr. Tony Whitt, who is an invaluable resource for Doctor Who Target books. He's read, he's reading them all. So I mean, that's one guy there, and having the panel of people on the podcast that he hosts do the ratings for us. So we're hoping sometime after November, maybe in December or January 2024, we will do the 1984 books, because we have to wait for them to catch up. And that's okay. So there you go. What's coming up soon? We're going to have a show on blue spines. We're going to do something on the blue spine targets. We're going to look at some of those things and some of the more unusual collectibles that have come through the email box here. So if you want something talked about or want me to do some research for you, just shoot me an email, drwhocollectorspodcast@gmail.com. Until then, keep collecting.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.